Just really briefly, why do we need to separate food scraps from the regular waste stream? Most of you guys are probably acutely aware why it's important. 20-30% of all waste is organic and doesn't belong in the landfill and in the trash. So we need to separate it. And separating that waste starts with, diverting it, and drop-off stations are a big puzzle in that piece. Generally speaking, for that infrastructure, we have two options, which are curbside collection and drop-off points. And we're going to focus on the drop-off points today because they are easier to implement. They have a lot of advantages over curbside to just get started. We have three different cities here with four people who are going to present today. First up is going to be Mallory Lawson out of Ann Arbor. And they have a really exciting program over there. She's actually the compost program coordinator. And then after that, we're going to move on to Princeton and hear from what they've been doing over there. And then we're going to wrap it up with the village of Ridgewood. So we have three different communities, three different applications. One is a multifamily housing project. And so there's different real life scenarios. I hope you'll all be able to learn something, take something away from this event today. After the short presentations, we'll have a Q&A, a little bit of a discussion where you can all put in your questions and maybe ask some of the presenters directly or put it in the audience, connect with the other folks that are here today. So why don't we get started? And I'll hand it over to Mallory now.
Thank you, Tim. I've mentioned I'm the compost program coordinator for the city of Ann Arbor. We also have Sarah Mason on the call with us today. She's our resource recovery manager at the city, and she'll be helping me answer some questions. So with that, I'll get started on how we're expanding food scrap diversion in Ann Arbor and engaging our residents in the planning process. So for anyone who might not be familiar with Ann Arbor, I wanted to give a quick overview just to lay some groundwork. We are located in Southeast Michigan, about 40 miles west of Detroit. We have an area of around 29 square miles, and we are, of course, home to the University of Michigan. And this second photo is our entire solid waste team. We are responsible from everything from collections, both the service we provide directly and what we contract out, also to the education, outreach, and planning that support our trash recycling and compost programs. Altogether, we serve close to 30,000 residential and commercial customers across the city. One of the facilities that the city owns is our compost site that you see here. In 2005, this site was expanded into a fully engineered facility with a new 25-acre compost pad, making the site around 50 acres in total. It was managed by the city for a very long time, but in 2011, we started contracting the operations out to We Care Denali. This is a windrow composting facility. As you can see, the nice windrows in the photo. We process around 10,000 to 13,000 tons of material annually. Alongside our curbside collections, we offer free drop-off for residents at the site year-round. So this includes up to 1 cubic yard of material per day. And then during the fall leaf season, we open it up so that both residents and their landscapers can both drop off an unlimited amount. And then the last thing I'll mention here is that every spring we do offer 1,000 cubic yards of finished compost back to our residents. And then, as I kind of hinted to in the last slide, the city has a pretty long history of composting. Even before the state of Michigan banned yard waste from being sent to landfills, the city implemented this ban across Ann Arbor in 1989. Leaves were collected from the street for many years, as many places. And then in 2008, the city started offering compost carts for automated collection. A year after that, the city started accepting vegetative food scraps in carts. And by 2010, we did away with collecting leaves from the streets altogether. And in 2014 is when all food scraps began to be accepted. So that includes meat, dairy, bones, cooked food, stuff you wouldn't normally put in your backyard bin. And then another big change that I wanted to mention happened in 2022 when we started collecting once a month during the winter. Before this, the city would pause on compost collections for the months of January, February, and March. But now we've been on this schedule where we collect over the first week of each of those months. So that's been going pretty well. And that brings me to where we're at now, which is focusing on the expansion of our program that better serves our multifamily residents. Before I get into future plans, I also just wanted to lay out what we are doing. As I mentioned, we have a pretty well-established curbside program using your 64 and 95-gallon carts, and those are offered free to all single-family homes. We also have the option to drop off directly at the compost site, which I talked about. And like anywhere else, we have our groups of self-motivated backyard composters. Washtenaw County actually has a pretty popular master composter program in place for many years. So I'm sure that affects these numbers, but we don't have, exact data on that. The last option we have for residents at this time is piloting a shared community cart. So this is for special instances that communities reach out and they're very interested in diverting their food scraps, and they have a few folks that live there that would be willing to kind of direct the program and manage it. So we have a handful of these, but this is not something that we is on a request basis. And then lastly, we have our commercial service, which is for obviously our restaurants and businesses in the community, and that is serviced by My Green Michigan. Is one of our contracts that we have. And then the last thing I'll talk about before I really jump into the drop-off bin project is our focus on food waste prevention. Some of the guidance for this work comes from the city's carbon neutrality plan, also known as the A20 plan that was initiated in 2019. The document outlines our path for achieving a just transition to community-wide carbon neutrality by 2030. And one of the core strategies is to change the way we use, reuse, and dispose of materials, which does include food scraps. We also want to support the state of Michigan's plan to reduce food waste to landfills by 50% by the year 2030. One of the initiatives that we've worked closely with our sustainability department on is the A20 Food Waste Challenge that ran in 2024. So this was a week-long email-based challenge where residents could earn points for completing a daily call to action and then win prizes. In 2025, the same group worked together to create sort of an upgraded version of that challenge, which we called the Fast Track to Food Waste Reduction. And this time we made it a 21-day habit building program, created a webpage for it, added fun aspects like teams, streaks, and a leaderboard. And then the most recent initiative we've taken is what you see on the page right here. This is pulled from our annual disposal guide that was sent out to all residents. The 3 key tips we shared are: number 1, buy only what you need. Number 2, keep food fresh for longer with proper storage. And number 3 is to make the most of your food. One thing I wanted to just add here. So as I've hopefully shown, we're already addressing food waste from a few different angles, but we do still see the need for an expanded compost program on the multifamily side of things. So largely because of the university's presence, we have a rather high proportion of residents living in multifamily housing. As you can see in the pie chart here, only 42% are single-family detached homes, and the rest are some form of multifamily housing. So this just goes to show that with our current programming, we're missing out on a pretty big piece of the pie when it comes to food waste. When we look over at the bar chart on the right, we can see that the majority of these properties are actually pretty small as well, with less than 10 units, which means that there's a lot of them. So we figured we needed to find some solution. And then in the top right is just an example of one of these larger houses that we see a lot of in Ann Arbor, that are split into several units for student housing. So just wanted to show that as a visual. So that brings us here, the development of our food scrap drop-off project. One of the first steps we took, which you saw a little bit of in the last slide, was to look at the number and distribution of multifamily properties that don't currently have compost service. At this point, we did look at what it would take to expand curbside service to everyone, but pretty quickly realized that drop-off sites made more sense for this population. When we started talking about drop-off sites, we wanted to be methodical about it and try to kind of confirm that we could set up a drop-off system that places drop-off bins within a couple miles of all multifamily residents, while still keeping us within a reasonable number of sites to deploy. We use GIS to do what's called a location allocation analysis, which you see on the right here. What this does in the most basic sense is identify optimal locations for facilities based on the location of their demand points, or in this case would be the location of multifamily properties. So all of the small teal dots are those multifamily properties, and then the stars indicate where all of these points can kind of come together. So in this specific scenario, we wanted to map what it would take to keep multifamily properties within 2 miles of a drop-off point, and that showed us that 10 sites could effectively do this. So that's kind of where the drop-off site planning took off. We started researching different style drop-offs, including both non-access controlled and access-controlled ones. But ultimately settled on planning for enclosures that do feature the access control. We started compiling our budget based on the idea that we would deploy 10 drop-off sites. Instead of relying on a computer system to tell us exactly where those sites should be located, though, or making guesses, we figured we'd turn to the community to better guide bin locations. So we had seen this done in some other communities like Washington, D.C., for example, and thought it was a great practice to follow. So for the next few slides, I'll just be going into detail about this engagement process. The main question we asked residents was where they wanted to see a food scrap drop-off bin located, and we used a few different outreach methods to do so. One of these was tabling at the farmer's market. Probably the biggest one was sending postcards to all multifamily residents, which you can see here at the very top. What this did was just briefly introduce the project, inform them that we were looking for feedback and how to participate. It also directed them to the project page where they could either leave their feedback right away or register for a virtual information session to learn more before adding their feedback. This information was also sent out in the city's monthly community newsletter. We also talked to stakeholders in the project to hear their thoughts and help us get the word out to the right people. So that included folks at the University of Michigan, as well as our local commission on disability issues, as we wanted to make sure that we were being thoughtful of our disabled community members and doing what we can to make them accessible. So coming back to the project page that I mentioned as one of our outreach methods, I wanted to show a little bit more about this because it was essential to our engagement process and will continue to be a useful communication tool as we move forward with this project. The city recently started using an engagement platform that allows us to make these neat sites and more easily gather input. So what we did was provide some basic information first, like the purpose of the project, key details, our funding source, how this project impacts residents. We also highlighted some examples from other communities to help with our residents' understanding of what a drop-off program would look like so that they can more effectively engage with the project. As I mentioned before, this is where we link to our virtual information sessions and now holds the slides and recording of that. We were also able to incorporate a Q&A feature for public questions. So a neat thing about this was that since they were public, people seemed to have their questions answered by reading other people's questions that were already asked. So we weren't having to repeat the same questions or repeat the same answers and, just make it transparent as to what questions people are asking. And then the main feature of this page was, of course, the tool for residents to suggest a bin location. So I'm going to go into that in the next slide. We wanted to make the process easy for residents and figured that not everyone would have a unique location to suggest or just wanted to participate with a little bit less of a lift. So we offered 2 ways to participate. You could add your suggestion to the map you see here on the left by clicking Add Marker, and then it would give you a little pin to drop on the map. This comment box would also pop up with it and ask for a brief description of the location suggested. The other way was just to upvote other people's suggestions by looking through the map and giving them a little thumbs up. When a location was suggested, we asked 3 additional questions. One of them was just to check that we're reaching the right folks. So we asked, are you a resident of a multifamily property? Number 2, we asked them to approximate how far they live from the location that they suggested. And number 3, we asked if they'd be more likely to use drop-off bins if they were provided with countertop food scrap caddies. So the results, we ended up bringing a total of around 600 people to the webpage to either find more information, ask questions, or provide input. 88 of these residents participated by suggesting a location, and 69 residents participated by voting other people's suggestions. So the map you see on the right side is the final map of pins that our residents dropped. And actually, if you think back to the map that was showing where multifamily residents are distributed throughout the city, you can see some similarities in the clusters. We also have this word cloud on the left side that was generated from the comments left alongside suggestions. So you can see that grocery stores were a very popular one, as that's the biggest one on this word cloud. Suggestions to place them directly at apartments were also frequent, but considering the nature of the program we're trying to set up, we're looking at more of the communal public locations that were suggested. So some other ones were just shopping centers in general, the farmers market, the mall, library, some parks, and so on. So pretty much what we expected, but we're a little bit surprised at how prevalent grocery stores and shopping centers were in the suggestions. And it seems like people would like to, bring their food scraps along with them on a daily, weekly chore that they already have scheduled, into their week. These are the results we received from the additional 3 questions we asked. So the first one was pretty confirming. We only heard from a couple multifamily residents in the process. So not that we're excluding their input, but we did want to prioritize getting input from multifamily residents, as they're really the ones that the program is created for, or will be created for. In our second question, we can see that 90% of suggested locations were within a mile of where they live. So this was also just to inform us and kind of check in that keeping drop-off sites within a couple of miles of folks should be our ultimate goal. And lastly, we heard from almost 50% of people that they would be more likely to use drop-off bins if given a food scrap caddy. So this is another piece of the project that we're still planning for, but definitely want to try and include in our program launch if possible. I realize I'm taking a little bit of time, so I'm just going to go through this quick. So to kind of end this out, I want to talk about the current phase that we're in, what our next steps look like. Since we finished our public engagement and put some more thought into how to best get this program off the ground, we've decided to shift our goal a little bit to only piloting 5 drop-off sites to begin with. We plan to have 1 unit at each location, but as we're looking at potential sites, we're definitely also looking at whether there might be room for an additional bin at some point in the future. So keeping that in mind. We know that we want to have enclosures with access control, so we're looking at all options there, including Metro Stores units. Our main focus right now is definitely reaching out to potential sites that were voted on by residents, but also assessed by our own team for feasibility. We haven't yet confirmed any locations as host sites yet, but that is where we're looking to next. Once we have an agreement with 5 sites, we plan to take the next steps for procuring bins and getting ready for installation. So, of course, the last step in this process would be our education and outreach for launch. So with that, I will end it. And just want to say thank you again for having me here. And here's my information here on the right, and Sarah Mason's information as well, for any questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Merely. That was packed with good information and some things that I hadn't seen before. So you shared the contact information, and also saw that you used some of the things that did in Washington. And I think that's exactly why we're doing these events, because we want to bring people together who are kind of like doing the same things. And I think it's great. So people can reach out to you if they have questions. Next up is Jenny Ludmer from Princeton.
Hi, I'm Christine Simonton. I'm filling in for Jenny, who had a conflict today. She is doing another event. So thanks for inviting us to participate in this webinar. I'm the executive director at Sustainable Princeton. We are a nonprofit that works with the municipality of Princeton. We have a fee-for-service agreement to assist them with a number of their sustainability initiatives, including assisting them with their food scrap drop-off program. So a little bit of history about how we came to be where we are with our food scrap program was bit of a journey. In 2010, Princeton had launched an opt-in curbside collection program. It actually ran till about, I think, 2019. And this was a program where if you were a Princeton resident, you could pay $65 a year to have a cart for your food scraps that you would put out once a week, and it would get collected, and it was taken to a facility in Delaware, which was quite a bit of ways from where we are located in New Jersey. And there were some trials and tribulations with that program. That facility in Delaware was closed, so the town's hauler had to find a new facility. And the town doesn't haul it itself. It had a contract for a hauler, and then also had to find a location for a place that would accept the food scraps. And there was another location that was found that would accept the food scraps, another aerobic static pile type of facility that was in Pennsylvania. That facility started rejecting what the town was sending to it because of high contamination rates. And the town, tried to improve the contamination rates. There was another facility that was found that would accept it. It was actually a little further out in Pennsylvania. And it also started rejecting because of the contamination, and the hauling costs were increasing. So the town decided to put the program on hiatus. And so it was, a bit unfortunate, but a lot of learning happened along the way. Then in 2019, council adopted a climate action plan. We helped the town to convene a number of community members and stakeholders to put together a climate action plan that the council adopted in 2019. And that plan included a number of actions around materials management, and included actions on how to evaluate all its waste streams, including solid waste, recycling, food, leaf, and brush, and try to figure out a way to implement plans to save money and reduce emissions. And then in 2022, the municipality convened a waste team that included members from our team, members from the town's public works, infrastructure and engineering department, and the environmental commission, and members of Princeton Council. The town also engaged the services of a waste consultant, Wayne DeFeo Associates, who had deep knowledge about the waste rules, regulations, and landscape in New Jersey. And that waste team initiated an online survey to find out, what the interest was in the community. If we were to restart a food scrap collection program, would folks consider dropping it off? Or would they rather have a curbside program? And so the waste team also, with the assistance of DeFeo Associates, explored program options like Ann Arbor's programs, like other towns and cities across the country, to learn how they were managing food scraps. And the result was that the town, when its solid waste contract was up for renewal, put out into the contract a request for bids for curbside collection, to find out exactly, what would it cost right now that we were a few years away from having had a curbside collection program. The bid that was sent out asked for bids of what it would cost. And it was, as you may not be surprised, because it would be a separate route, an additional collection day than the solid waste, you're basically paying double what you would for hauling. So, that was one of the confounding issues, was the cost to have a curbside collection is, unless you have a truck that can accept both solid waste and food waste, you have to have a separate route. And that's going to be double the cost, more or less, than your solid waste hauling. So the town decided not to proceed with having going back to having a curbside collection program. So as I mentioned, we looked at a number of different locations and other cities and how they were managing it. And as I mentioned, the cost was really prohibitive for going back to a curbside collection. In 2023, there was a federal grant opportunity, the USDA's grant program to help towns with its food waste recycling initiatives. So the town of, of Princeton applied for and received a grant to launch a drop-off food scrap program. So why a food scrap drop-off program? Well, we learned the curbside would be great if we could restart it. It's just cost prohibitive. It's more affordable, lower startup costs, low operational costs, and it's scalable so that you could grow over time. And as you scale it up, you can manage the contamination much more easily as you scale. And it's equitable. It serves the entire community, including residents in multifamily housing. So after the town received the grant, it started by 2 pilot drop-off sites at the 2 municipal buildings in town. The town entered into a contract with Trenton Renewables to accept the food scraps. Trenton Renewables is about 14 miles away from Princeton, and they are an aerobic digestion facility. The pilot consisted of 2 64-gallon waste containers housed in wooden sheds. And we learned that the wooden sheds are not quite durable. They didn't offer an effective locking mechanism or hands-free operation. So it was a good learning experience. It really did help us get the pilot up and going. But we realized we needed something that was a little more suitable. So in our research and looking at other towns and other cities, we came across Metro Store as a vendor of food scrap containers. So the municipality purchased 3 self-contained metal bins from Metro Store. They're locked. They're unlocked by a keypad or a smartphone app, and opened with a foot pedal to allow a hands-free drop-off of the food scraps. And then the grant allowed for us to expand to a total of 10 drop-off locations around town. So based on the success of using the Metro Store at those pilot locations, we were able to go ahead and increase the amount of sites to 10. And, similar to Ann Arbor, we wanted to have these placed around town so that the majority of people who wanted to participate had one nearby. We wanted them to be near multifamily housing developments, our affordable housing developments, and very similar to what Ann Arbor learned, people like to have it near our shopping center, near our local grocery store, because they can incorporate dropping it off in part of their weekly errands. So since its inception in October of 2023, we've diverted over 50 tons of organics from our landfill. Nearly 500 households are participating. And we hear from Trenton Renewables that we have been doing a really good job of keeping contamination to a minimum. Everyone who signs up has to pass a little quiz before they're given the key code to access the drop-off locations. And the quiz reinforces what things can go in there and what things can't. The bins also have signage on them to remind you of what can go in and what can't. And as you probably all guess, the people who are doing this voluntarily are invested in its success. So they are going to want to make sure that they aren't putting anything in there that's contaminating. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Christine. That was very insightful. And I think it also, just hearing the history of the kind of failed curbside collection and then switching over and trying again, like not letting go of this problem, really good. Also, how do you actually now check for contamination? Like, do you actively do visual inspections, or what are you doing now to track this?
Yeah. Good question. So, our public works department is now picking up the food scraps and takes it to Trenton Renewables. So they're the ones that are doing the visual inspection. But when it gets to Trenton Renewables, as the contents are put into what's called their hopper, there's a camera, and so they're looking and inspecting it as well. So we get feedback from Trenton Renewables about our contamination rates.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
And yeah.
and they have, I believe, the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection is requiring them to keep their contamination levels, I believe, below 10%. So they are really on top of tracking contamination rates.
Thank you. So did you have to do any sort of education when you first started, or was it always kind of clean as soon as you switched over?
It was clean as soon as we started. And again, people who are doing this voluntarily,
Yeah.
are invested in the success. They want to follow the rules. They want to be able to continue doing it. So they're very diligent.
Yeah, and intentional, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. Let's jump over to Ridgewood and hear from Sean Hamlin. And then we're all gonna come back together and have a little bit of a chat. But let's hear from Sean.
So thank you all for having me. Just want to introduce myself. My name is Sean Hamlin. I'm from the village of Ridgewood. I am the recycling coordinator. I am also the clean communities coordinator and supervisor of sanitation. And I've been in this position since 2019. And in 2019, one of the things that I came into that they'd been trying to do for a while was implement a food scrap program, and I kind of inherited that. And it took a couple of years thanks to COVID, but we finally did get our program up and running. So just a little bit about Ridgewood. We're a population of about 25,000 or 26,000. It's going up every day because we're building big housing complexes here. And our municipal staff collects solid waste and recycling. We don't contract out to anyone. Our recycling center is open 5 days a week. And we have a very environmentally conscious community. And they were really demanding that we do something about the food scraps. So that was one of the things that we were challenged with immediately. So our recycling program, this is a list of things that we collect, everything from the normal commingled recycling, paper, corrugated cardboard. We do Christmas tree lights. We just launched a mattress recycling program, which is in its pilot stage right now, but it's doing great. And I hope we can continue that. And so our initial kickoff for our food scrap program was started out as a pilot program. And the way that we gained interest in it is at our Earth Day event. At our table, we just had a little information about food scraps and a little sign up sheet for people that would be interested in it. And it wasn't a sign up sheet. It was just your email and your address and your phone number and your name, and just to see how many people would say they would sign up for this, because it was a lot of work that we were asking them to do. And we got about 200 applications, but we were only, because it was in a pilot stage, we were only able to do it really for about 100 houses because of affordability. So this is what we started out with. Up in the right-hand corner, you see there was a little application that we sent out when we were ready to launch it, just to vet who was really serious about joining the program and who would be willing to do the work. Because what we were asking them to do, because it was a pilot program and this was purely about the data, and they had to weigh their trash and their buckets that we gave them. And they had to go on weekly and fill out a little form and enter their weights from their trash and their bucket, and then they had to bring their buckets to us. So it was a lot. But again, that's how you get you know that you're getting the people that are really invested in doing this. And a lot of people didn't even finish the application because they weren't really willing to do the work. But we started out with these 48-gallon totes, and we got a storage shed to keep the totes from being available to animals. And these buckets they have the gamma lids on them, so you don't smell them until you open them. But they don't, keep any odor in your house. And then there's a little list of things that can go into the bucket. And we provided a sticker on the bucket plus a refrigerator magnet. So our recycling center, we have a very unique setup there. It's a drive-through recycling center. No one gets out of their cars; they just drive up, and our attendants pop the trunk and they take their recyclables out. So that was it. It really helped out with this model because now we can do visual inspections. So upon their drop off of their buckets, we had a little sheet. They'd have to give us their name and their address and what the weights of their buckets were. And we would weigh them ourselves to make sure that there weren't people just kind of fudging the information and not doing the work. And we did find that there were several people that were doing that were just entering weights but not really weighing the buckets. And the buckets were a lot heavier than what they were putting on their form that they filled out online. And then we collect the buckets and the totes, and then we hooked up with a company called Natural Upcycling that does take our stuff to Trenton Renewables. They pick up once a week, and that's been working so far. You can see the guy in there cleaning the cans out every time he comes. So we have nice clean cans to put back in the shed, and the odor is not offending any of our neighbors. And when we started this program out, again, it was about the data, but then we had a really good a lot of success. It was a 9-month pilot program, and in that 9 months, we collected over 16 tons of food scraps and removed them from the waste stream. And I didn't think we'd reach that number with only 100 participants, but we did. And what we learned was that a lot of people were their waste diversion, and they were going down to almost no garbage. It was way more than what we thought it would be. But we did have some challenges with the program. One of the stories I love to tell was one of our very first customers brought down his bucket, and we opened it up, and there was a full watermelon in there that had never been cut up. And and so we did explain to him that that's not what we want. It's not gonna. We want the melon rind. We don't want the full watermelon. We want the scraps from it, not the full watermelon. So our goal starting this thing was to scale up the program slowly and eventually be able to provide household pickup free to our residents. That hasn't materialized yet because we still, in New Jersey, the laws aren't allowing us to compost on our site. We do have a Class C facility, but due to the proximity of our closest neighbors, we're not allowed to process grass or food. So we're still using the hauler. That's still our goal. We're not going to give up on that. But the next logical way to scale it up was to provide drop-off locations. And there's a picture of our first can that we bought this year. And when we placed it at our social services building, which is great because the social services has access to it. And during the summer, there's also a farmer's market there, and they will have access to it as well. And that's going to allow us to really ramp up our program and collect more and come up with bigger numbers. And our goal is also to have the next year 2 more placed, just to provide. What we found out was a lot of people weren't doing it anymore or participating because of our hours at our recycling center, because we close at 3 and we open up at 8, and some people who obviously work those hours can't get there. So this was a big milestone for us this year. We just crossed over 100 tons for the longevity of our program, and I think that 19.3 for 2025 is going to go up a lot by the end of the year with the holidays coming up. And I'm really surprised that we got there. But I think part of it is because we launched these cans, we really saw a dip in participation, and now we have more people signing up. And with the cans, the Metro Store cans, you have to participate in our program, in our food scrap program, to get access to the can. Not anyone can just go and sign up, because we do want to make sure that people are invested in this because they are volunteering to do it. And we've got no contamination. We do inside the can, there's a 64-gallon tote, and we use clear bags so we can visually inspect it when we pick it up. The can is picked up daily and swapped with a new one. That way, again, there's no odor complaints from anyone by the social services building. But we're really happy with the way things are going. And so one of the other challenges is keeping our council invested in this, because right now for us, it's not a money saver. Over the course of our program, it's cost about close to $16,000 in disposal fees, which would be more, it's more than if we just threw it away in the garbage. But that's not our goal. Our goal is sustainability. And here's just a little thing that we try to promote. Again, we're not in this, for saving money. We try to promote education on how to teach people how to shop better and not have food scraps. And I like to think that that's one of the reasons why our numbers started to dip, is because the people that were participating in it, when they finally got to see how much they were throwing away, that they stopped buying, as much food and stopped cooking as much food. And I've learned that too. I learned that I participated in the program myself, and I learned that lesson as well. And what we started doing was HelloFresh, because everything is portioned, and we kind of when we did that, we limited our waste to very little. We had almost no garbage because it's portioned out for a family of 4. So where do we go from here? Our short-term goal, again, is to add more of the Metro Store cans, because they're working out great. And I think more people will sign up if we put them in the right locations. And the long-term goal is to just, again, scale this up to where we can eventually try out our luck and hopefully have better success than other places on doing the curbside pickup program. And I think the key to that is providing it as a free service. And that's all I have. And here's my contact info if anybody wants it.
Thank you very much for sharing the information, for putting out your contact information as well. I really like this collaboration that's going on here. I've seen a couple questions in the chat. One of them were whether or not your programs accept compostable paper products. And maybe you can all just very briefly respond. I see that Kristen has already responded for Princeton. They're not accepting them. How about you, Sean?
Not currently. Only because of the amount of space that they take up. And again, our goal is to eventually compost this on our own. And if we can do that, then yes. And one of the things in that category is we have a big problem, like everyone else does, with recycling pizza boxes because of the grease, and that would be something that we could add into it.
Yeah. And how is that in Ann Arbor? I think I heard something that you guys were stopping accept compostable products, or like.
Yeah, I can explain that for sure. So in 2023, we did transition from accepting all BPI certified compostable products to CMA certified compostable products. So that is the transition probably that you're referring to. But we do take the CMA certified products still at our compost facility and then in curbside carts. But for the drop-off program that we are planning, we would only plan to accept food scraps and the paper bags that are used to collect those food scraps for the same reasons with space and just, prioritizing food scraps as, what we want to divert from the landfill. So to be determined, I guess, when we really get our program off the ground. But yep, that's where we stand now.
Thank you.
Can elaborate a little bit more. When we had the curbside collection, when it was launched, it was sort of encouraged to put anything in there. The expression that was used was, if it grows, it goes. And we learned that was a real driver for the contamination. People who are doing this willingly are so invested in not sending anything to the landfill, they'll want to put anything in there that could be considered compostable. And that is really hard to manage contamination when you have people who are sort of wish cycling. And it's much easier to add later things that can now be put in there than it is to get people to just stop putting things in there. So we thought the best course was to limit it to just food scraps, and it can't be in a bag, even a paper bag or even a compostable bag. So as I said, so we can scale this. It will be much easier to scale and manage contamination if we start with just the basics of food scraps and not include any type of compostable paper or utensils.
Yeah, thank you.
And another point is, like, what we also learned is if the location that's going to accept it, it could change what they will accept. So you don't want to have to change the instructions if for whatever reason we could no longer take it to Trenton Renewables and it had to go to a different type of facility and they had different things that they would accept.
Yeah, it's hard to break patterns once they've become established. I guess in some cases, accepting the compostable products can be helpful, but it adds another it can complicate things. But specific to the labels, is it BPI, is it CMA? And then people buy something and it says compostable, but it's not the right certification. So yeah, it's very tricky.
Hey, Jay.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I have to jump off, but my program lead, Johanna, is going to stay on to answer any questions that might come in for Ridgewood. Okay.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. And if anybody wants to connect with Sean, we're going to share the slides with his contact information, so you can reach out. Yeah, I think it's interesting. We had 3 different communities, a smaller community, a larger community, and all can benefit from having these drop-off stations. I saw a question in the chat from Randall, and he asked how often the bins are being picked up. Can you maybe share that? And also, what interests me, kind of in the same realm, how many bins do you have per drop-off point? Is it just one because you're just getting started, or do you need multiple bins at more frequented points?
Yeah, I don't know how much I can really speak to that because we don't have the drop-off bins out there yet. But in the beginning, it obviously would take some time to like get another bin installed. So if we were seeing a lot of use out of one bin and needing to increase the service in some way, we would first increase our collection frequency and then look towards adding another bin eventually.
Maybe Nigel has some data on how often the carts need to be changed from other communities, just to kind of answer this question.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. I think it varies a lot depending on the number of people that are using it, and clearly you can vary the frequency as people start to to engage and use the facility more. I know a lot of low volume users, they'd put it on a weekly collection, and we certainly wouldn't advise going longer than that because of odor and that sort of thing. In DC, for example, a lot of those are collected at least daily because very high volumes. And you can use fill sensors so that you actually get a trigger notification going to the hauler when it reaches a preset point, so 70%, 80%. But yeah, it does vary quite a lot depending on the situation, if that helps, Tim.
Mhm. Do we have any numbers on like what's the average kind of poundage or like that people drop off and like let's say there's a 96-gallon cart in there, how long does it take to be filled up, or how many dumps?
Joanna or Christine have any data on that? I would expect the average deposit to be sort of £2.5, £3, somewhere around there. We have a rough rule of thumb that a 65-gallon cart, if it's full, could be £300 plus. That's getting pretty heavy. Not many people use 96. Sorry, Christine, you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, please go ahead.
At our recycling center, when we received the 5-gallon containers there, we observed approximately 25 of those can fit comfortably into a container in close succession. Over time, it does start to settle, and so then you can fit more. But out on the street at the Metro store container, we find that many people aren't actually bringing a 5-gallon container. It's much smaller. They just take their kitchen counter container or just something a lot more comfortable for them to travel with. So that could then mean that even more people can utilize that container.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and I also saw that Rebecca just posted in the chat on how they're using them. We had something that was also related to these pickups from Marissa. I'm not sure if we answered the question completely. She asked, like what happens if you're like, would you add more containers or increase the frequency of pickups? Like, what is kind of like the balance? What makes more sense? Maybe that's the question for Nigel. Would you add another container or increase frequency of pickup if you feel like the bins are being if the capacity is reached?
Yeah, great question, Tim. We'd love to sell more containers. Of course we would. But I think the great thing about this is flexibility. And you can start stepping up your frequency of collection rather than adding more containers. You've got quite a bit of scope before you need to add containers. But the other side of that is, if you do add more containers, you're starting to make them more accessible to more people. So it's flexible, but it's also scalable. Interested in the users' feedback on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so probably also dependent on the context. If it's just a similar amount of people just dropping off more, or if there's more people actually coming into the program. And I actually had a question about the access control. I think like what made you settle on access control? I think it was in Ann Arbor, right, where you decided to have access control for the multifamily houses. What was the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have had, issues with contamination in the past. That's a huge thing that we try to keep managed at our compost site, especially now that we have a little bit of a tougher guidance, rules to follow with the CMA fiber only items. So that's part of it. We also, just having such a large population, a large large part of it is very transient. It does just increase the risk for dumping. We also see it as another challenge, getting host sites on board with us, as just, the question of, will this become a dump site? If it's just, free to use carts. So we really we want to collect clean material. And that's the bottom line of it.
Yeah, thank you. And speaking about dumping, we had a question in the chat whether or not these drop-off stations actually attract any dumping of other wastes. Well, you're kind of just starting the program, but maybe Christine, did you have? Well, you said you don't, so
Yeah, I can't say it's never happened, but it hasn't been an issue. And as I said in the chat, I think they're in public, very visible locations. I think the look of the bins helps because I think this is, an unproven psychological, hypothesis I have. It's that because it looks neat and clean and it's public, people aren't going to leave things there. We do one of the drop-off locations in the building where I'm in right now, which is one of the municipal buildings. It's in the back of a parking lot. And I've seen maybe a few things dumped there. And I think because it's hidden, and people don't feel like they're being watched, and it's not one of the Metro Store ones. It's one of the original corrals that we showed that I think because it doesn't look as neat and shiny and new, and that it does discourage people. It may lead people to think, oh, I can just leave something here and nobody's going to notice. But the ones by our schools, the ones by the other municipal building, in very public, visible locations with the Metro Store units are less likely to have dumping.
And I think those pretty decals really make a difference. You saw the one with the out. I like kind of visualizing the what's to come with the compost. I really like the ones in Washington. They were like so colorful. So
because we did this in sort of stages,
Yeah.
or some of the locations that might have been a little hesitant, like Mallory said, some it's kind of hard getting, others on board to host a location. So when they saw a few of them out there and saw how they were working, it was easier for one of the multifamily or the townhome development that was one of the last ones to get a location. When we asked the first time, they were like, no, thank you. Or, we think it would be too hard for us to manage. There'll be dumping, there'll be smells. When they saw them around town in operation, they got comfortable with it and then eventually signed up to be a location.
Yeah, which underlines the importance of these pilot programs to kind of ease into a simple thing to kind of start to get the hardcore people that really are on board first adopters, and then scale up from there. And we've seen this over and over with all the successful programs, where they just scale up from a pilot. Someone's asked in the questions about the extra work for the drivers, like how significant a strain was this on the truck drivers, city laborers, public work stuff? Like, do you need new manpower, like new staff? Are you adding new staff, or is this something that's the pickup, the servicing? Can you do it with the existing staff?
At the point we're at in Ridgewood, we did not need new staff because we have our full service recycling center anyway, which has an attendant. And so as the cars drive in, he takes out bottles, cans, paper, cardboard, other things. And if they have their food container, he just takes that out. We don't do any hauling ourselves either. We pay a hauler. And then we do have staff on the road at all times. So the container that we started with at our train station, the Metro Store one, that's just part of someone's route now to go by and swap that out.
Yeah. How is it in Michigan? Are you planning to add a new staff or?
So similarly to Ridgewood, we will just be adding our plan right now, the number, like the initial number of 5 bins, they will just be added to existing routes, that we are collecting, residential compost from. But that is an important point because, had we gone maybe in the direction of providing curbside service to everyone, we definitely would have had to add either staff, a truck, both. So, yeah, that's what I can say there.
Thank you. Christine, did you need to add any new staff?
No, the town didn't add any staff, and when they agreed to apply for the grant and start up a drop-off location, they did include in that grant to cover the cost of the DPW folks who are hauling it, and so it is covered out of that grant. And I assume that the town, once the grant funding is dispersed and used, they will continue to have our public works folks pick it up. So it's a cost that the town is absorbing for where it currently is with the size of the program right now. And one of the things that was really important to the town to want to commit to doing this again was the fact that we now have a facility that's within 15 miles. So having a close facility that will accept the food scraps is really critical. So it's not that much of a drive for the DPW folks to pick up and take it. Will that be a limitation if we want to expand it even more? Possibly, but right now the town didn't have to add any staff. They just reallocated that staff to doing the pickup.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess that's one thing we haven't really touched on today in depth is the funding for these programs, which actually we had 2 other events similar to this one. If you're really interested in this, like everybody watching the replay or like in this audience still, make sure and watch the other 2 recordings that we have. They're on YouTube and the Metro Store website. And I think there was one where we talked a little bit more about funding, grants, and all these things, which are really important. But yeah, grants only go so far if you have a successful program, which can't be financed after the grant runs out. It's a problem, right? So yeah, very important to see what the financials are behind it. I've seen though, once you scale up the program further, the city often sees a reduction in the volume in the regular waste stream, which then often actually, it frees up some money over there, either for tipping fees and other resources. So there's a point where it can actually become sort of profitable in a way to not put it all in the landfill. Yeah. Well, I don't see any more questions in the chat right now. Although, yeah, I have a few, I think, that I got answered. I think this software that you use to put the pins and do the location upvoting thing, I think that was really interesting for me as like a digital marketing guy. I'm always interested in what sort of tools are people using. I think you did a lot of work figuring out where to put them, and I think that was very interesting to see because it's kind of the starting point, and a lot of people just wonder where to put them. Yeah, I guess if we don't have any more questions, I think we can wrap it up. I'm really thankful for everyone who stayed on this long. I mean, it's not most people have to go to other what we've planned. I would say it shows that there's a lot of interest in this exchange, and we're going to send out the slides with all the contact data, so you'll have that. Feel free to reach out to me, Tim Stecker, on LinkedIn with the Compost Marketing Agency, or reach out to Nigel if you have any questions. We can connect you. We can provide resources. Don't be shy. Cut your learning curve, with all the information that you have here. Watch the other 2 events that we have, and keep making compost mainstream. Thanks for attending, and have a great day, everyone.